Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentation Not Included. It is 7 p.m. UK time here on twitch.tv/DNI stream, and we're about to launch into episode 3.1, Enforced Quality Assurance. I'm Josey. I'm back. I'm happy to be back. Yay. I've actually gone through Dev Talk withdrawal. What the hell?
Ah, yes, I'm glad to have you back, Josey. I've missed you thoroughly, absolutely. And hello to everybody in Twitch chat. Nice to see people having a go already. If you've got anything to say during the show, please do join in. Ask a question, say something. We'll read it out if it's appropriate, or even if it's inappropriate. To be fair, that's sometimes the best response to answer. And as you can see, Patrick isn't here today either. He is away on business, I believe. Our guest today. Oh,
he's in chat.
He's in chat, yes, but he's away on business. Over in your neck of the woods, I believe, Josey. In fact,
he's not in my neck of the. He is in the United States.
Your original neck of the woods, where you come from.
My original neck of the woods.
Yes, and we are today joined by somebody who's graced us with our presence before, and is always forthcoming with his opinions, and his wonderful face is with us today as well. It's a little bit laggy, but he is. Hello, Anthony. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to be on the show again.
Good stuff.
Happy to be back.
So before we go into it, we're going to do our icebreaker. I have to first commend both Chris and Patrick for keeping the icebreakers going, even though I wasn't here. I'm very proud of them. The amount of arguments we've had behind closed doors involving coffee cups and pillows. Yes, thank you guys so much. But yes, we're going to have an icebreaker question. This is a question that has nothing to do with development. It's just a chance to get to know each other better. We've had Anthony on the show before, but now we get to go deeper into your psychology.
Oh, God.
If you could, at this moment in time, participate in any life-threatening activity and know that you won't die, what would it be and why?
Heroin. Absolutely.
Heroin?
Yep. If there was no consequences, if there was no consequences, I wasn't going to get addicted to it and everything. Give it a go. Why not? If there's no consequences, then fine.
And there go our ratings and all of our
ratings.
Oh yes, and all of the people who promote or not. What do you call those people? My brain can't even remember. The people who are supposed to give us money so we can promote. Oh, promoters, whatever,
sponsors,
commercials, sponsors. That's the word. Yeah. Psh, there go all our sponsors, all like 0 of them. That's great. What about you, Anthony?
Well, I'm just trying to think about it, but I can't think of any life-threatening activity that wouldn't involve a lot of pain before you died. Anyway, I can't really think of anything. I went to the a theme park last weekend, and after the first 3 or 4 rides of just like hurtling around on ridiculous roller coasters, I went, why am I doing this? I'm almost 40 now. This is a ridiculous thing to do.
It's hard, isn't it?
We do this to ourselves.
The older you get, the less theme parks are fun. It hurts more than anything else.
I don't know about that.
I came out of Disney a few years. Well, actually, it was 10 years ago. That's the last time I went to a theme park, and I came out with bruises, headaches. God, it was awful.
Well, in my case, I'm boring. I would swim down to the Marina Trench and hang out down there and see what happens to be there.
Good one. The sea does scare me, to be fair.
The sea is a terrifying place, but I'd still do it because at that point in time, I'd know I'm not going to die. So it's okay for me to go down there and see the gigantic fish that want to eat me because they won't, because I'll be okay. But I would go down to the Marina Trench because we know that that's where lots of volcanic activity happens. So at least there's a light source. Because I didn't mention you get to take, light sources with you or anything else like that. But I would love that. It would be fabulous. And for those of you who are watching, let us know in chat. I want to hear from Miss Sebek. Of course, I want to know what you would do. And of course, same thing with you, Patrick, Aussie, and all of you also who are watching.
Oki's just said the allowance was Aussie. It says that's Oki. There's 2 C's in that.
It's Aussie.
Oh.
Trust me, I know him.
He says the allowance was will not die. She said nothing of addiction and long-term effects, so maybe I can't have heroin then.
You sound so disappointed. We need to just make that a snippet and just put that up as our advertisement for a show. Maybe I just won't do heroin then. Darn.
So onto our topic, enforced QA. So let's start pretty easy, Anthony. What is QA? What does it stand for? What do you think it stands for? Because it's got two definitions. Two.
It's got two definitions.
Well, to me, it's either quality assurance or quality analysis.
Well, to me, it's questions and answers. So, welcome to the world of acronyms in the IT industry.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I've only ever heard of it referred to as quality assurance.
All right, fair enough. So
basically, about making sure that the software that you write isn't crap. However, it's all about a level of crapness, really, isn't it? Because you can't ever, if you had a million hours and a million people to sit there and test every single possible thing, you'd probably eventually get to something that had no bugs at all. But depending on the time constraints and the amount of stuff that you've got, and so if you're writing software for managing a nuclear reactor, obviously the quality assurance involved will be a lot higher for that than it would be for just standard enterprise software or something like that.
Well, you'd think that, wouldn't you? But we've had quite a few rockets that have blown up on the way into space, that kind of thing. So
metric versus imperial, go.
Yeah,
well, new Boeing 787 or 737 Max or whatever it is that keeps blowing up. That's probably a programmer's fault.
Possibly, yeah. But I mean, QA doesn't ever stop in my eyes. It's a thing that exists from the very first release, at least. You can start doing little bits. There's been times where I've worked with testers or QA guys, and they've wanted early releases of software so they can start the testing, or at least start putting plans together for the testing. Even though it's not fully finished and actually going to be a thumbs up, they want to actually see it beforehand. And a lot of the time, I'm reluctant to release until it's at least at a stage where they're not going to be reporting things that I know about, let's say.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I recently watched the game dev talk from the guy who was responsible for dealing with all of the support tickets that came in for Subnautica.
Oh, nice.
And the heat mapping and the things that they were doing to do the testing. And there's a whole fantastic, side to that. But it was basically public QA. And someone asked, well, how did you do it? And how did you go through it? And it's like, well, we can't go through every single piece of feedback we've gotten. What we can do instead is look for key terms or phrases that are linked together and make judgment calls based on that. And it's funny because you're talking about quality assurance. It's one of those things where I think the one thing that ends up being misunderstood from people who don't know how testing or quality assurance or anything like that works is what the expectation is of it. Because there are some people who, for example, in my world, I do a lot of web development. It's does when you click on button perform action you have told it to perform. And that is, yes. But someone goes, well, it didn't do it when I did it, but I wanted to do it while I was dragging the mouse this way and pressing this button and holding down these 7 keys. It's like, that's not what I'm looking for. So what I'd like to have Anthony define as our expert in quality assurance is what expectations do you believe people who work with people in who do quality assurance, or people who are in quality assurance, how should they approach it? Like, what expectations do you feel there should be?
Well, for a start, I'd just like to say I don't feel that I'm an expert on QA. It was just an interesting topic because I've ended up doing a lot of it for the past 6 months.
By choice?
Yeah, it was actually by choice to start off with, and then I just I initially said that I was happy to do some QA for a bit because I was quite new to the company. And I think QA is a great way to learn a system and how it works, and do you know what I mean? And I saw it was a great learning opportunity, and then I sort of ended up with more responsibility on top of that, and rather than like lower level, running the code and doing testing, I was doing more management and that sort of stuff, which was also interesting, but possibly not quite where I thought I was signing up for. But yeah, so the expectations of Sony in QA. I mean, the common thing is using a QA person as somebody to shift responsibility. Well, you signed it off, so it's not my fault, and I think that's possibly obviously a common but really bad thing, you know. And I think as a QA, you need to be mindful that not every bug can be fixed. So QAs can go the other way and be super dogmatic, and everything needs to be fixed. I'm not shipping anything because there, these bugs. There's a sort of a line in the middle that needs to be drawn, needs to be prioritized. Yeah, and realistic about your expectations.
I think it's similar. I see QAs as kind of a little bit similar to support staff, in that not as in they're a support for the developer. I suppose they are in a way, but what I meant is in the way that they approach things, because the support staff gets loads of bugs come in or loads of feedback from users, and then they cannot always implement all of it. Sometimes a bug will come in and it'll be the most important thing in the world and it'll be completely blocking a particular user because of something, but it's not high priority, and it will get shoved to the back of the queue because that one user isn't quite as important as the 500 users that are getting this minor bug, that's occurring. It's all about prioritization. It's all about managing the workload, as it is for developers, to be fair.
And also, along the same lines of being a support person, you have to be a good generalist. You have to have a good understanding of the whole of the system to be able to look at something and go, I know that that's wrong because I know what it should be doing, right? So, and also something that a lot of developers quite often lack, empathy. How is a real normal human being who's not a developer going to look at this software?
No, never. No, that is never. Users don't matter to software. I mean, come on. I find it interesting though, because there are, in the development world, we have the things like test-driven development or behavior-driven development, which is a bit more UX focused than anything else. And most people feel that if you do TDD, you don't have to worry about quality assurance.
Ooh,
do you agree with this?
It supports quality assurance. It doesn't replace it.
And that's why you see it as support, Chris.
No, TDD isn't support. TDD is a process that you take.
No.
Develop.
I'm talking about QA. You see QA as, you said, kind of like support.
Well, in terms of the work, in terms of the process and the prioritization methods, at least, it's not necessarily a support of a developer, because it's very. In fact, you know what? I take that all back. Yes, it is. It's as symbiotic as the support function is to a developer in an enterprise. Because if you have a good QA team, you're bouncing off each other constantly, and you're negotiating what is needed. Again, depending on what your level is. If you're just a junior developer and you're getting given the bugs to fix, that's one thing. But if you're the lead developer or the product owner or somebody who's in charge of actually making a decision on this bug, right, needs to be fixed because of this, and this, that's a business decision rather than a development decision.
Well, I have to take my hat off to the company you work for, Anthony. You actually have a QA department, it seems, or group of individuals to do QA.
No, we didn't.
Oh?
It was just me.
Okay, but you now have one. I mean, you said you've been taking on more responsibility, so you are doing that. I mean, we have some viewers, like our poor Tultepe, whose very question is pretty much the summation of most people I know, and that is, what is this QA? And it's true, and I think that's why we have things like test-driven development and stuff like that, because having TDD at least gives you something to check against. So
TDD is a really interesting one. So I find TDD really helpful for writing sort of, for formulating what a sort of a low level thing is going to do. But I certainly wouldn't use TDD to test a whole system. You don't develop a system that way. TDD is really, really good for formulating, what your small unit is going to do.
Your modules, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, having done TDD a few times, I'm not entirely sure that the tests that you write from TDD have that much value going forward once you've finished that small contained module. I mean, sometimes for refactoring and that sort of stuff, but you can end up with a lot, because a problem in tests is that they take time to run, so you want as good feedback as you can as quickly as possible. So, a project with a billion TDD tests that are testing things like, if I put 1 in this field, you know, and that because you can end up testing things that are basically just properties of the program.
Have you?
Is this property a string and things like that? Do you know what I mean?
We're in danger of going.
There is nope, sorry.
I was going to say we're in danger of going into TDD here because it's not strictly QA. BDD is a bit more appropriate for behaviors and business driven design and development specifically. TDD is the methodology you'd use within BDD to actually implement your test. You can go crazy. You can do 150% code coverage. I mean, for God's sake, the amount of times I've written 100% code coverage and then kept going, you know, it happens if you really want to be that anal about it. But it depends. BDD is much more appropriate. Let's kind of move on from that, I think.
Well, we had someone ask what BDD is.
Yeah.
So who wants to take a moment and explain BDD, which is behavior-driven development?
Yeah, behavior-driven development is essentially you take a user behavior of some description. So you say, let's take it a front-end example. We have a form, and we want to say, as a administrator, I need to be able to view and edit this form. And edit might even be another test. So that is your behavior. What you would then do is you would write a test that would test that, whether it's a front-end test or a back-end test, it doesn't really matter. As a developer, you would write some code that tests to make sure that that constraint is covered. As a TDD developer, XP TDD developer, now XP is extreme programming. The extreme comes from the fact that we're writing tests at a much smaller scale, a lower tier. We, as Anthony said, we might be writing a test that tests that when you put 1 into this field, this happens. When you put a string into this field, this happens. When you put nothing into this field, this happens. That is less useful to the business, but much more useful to the developer. And going forward, it allows you to confident with what you're changing in the future or what you're adding to something. But if you follow solid principle, this is a whole different topic, by the way. If you follow solid principles, which we're definitely not getting into, solid principles kind of cover that level of TDD as well. But anyway, so yes.
Yeah, but yes. So going back to quality assurance,
yes, indeed.
Picking on poor Anthony.
So quality assurance really for me is about the whole test pyramid. I'm going to use some jargon of the test pyramid. Have you heard of the test pyramid?
Doesn't actually ring any bells, no.
Okay, so the idea of the test pyramid is that you know, the bottom of the test pyramid is like unit tests, where you've got lots and lots of unit tests, and they run very quickly. And as you go up the pyramid, you test more and more stuff at once, but with less tests, because as you go up the pyramid and you're loading more stuff in, the tests take longer to run. So you know, the QA is about building that test pyramid, I suppose, and whilst the developers write the unit test at the bottom end, they need to have some knowledge of what the coverage is at that to know how many tests they need to run at the bigger end, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
From a programmer who's doing QA perspective.
Is it like a test pyramid scheme, as in it's an inverse pyramid that you're talking about? You create more tests or you create less tests as you go on?
No, it's a test pyramid, a correct way up pyramid.
All right.
So the idea is that the top of the pyramid, there's very few tests.
Okay, right.
Because
most of them are manual and they're UI based.
Super end to end, load everything with all the real dependencies and poke a transaction through. So you'd only have a few of those tests, especially if it's like a payment system where you have to exchange real money to test like everything. Then, do you know what I mean? And then below that, you'd have some like detailed end-to-end tests with mocked out dependencies for maybe, you know, like real payment systems, and then below that maybe mocked out systems with no databases in them, and then below that, you know, standard integration tests, and below that unit tests. So
okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did while I was working on QA was develop a compatibility test framework, which I say test framework. It's basically just copying jar files around and running them and making sure that they all work together. It's not rocket science. But I managed to flush out a few bugs with it and give the company a bit more confidence that the software would work with previous versions. So this was a backwards compatibility type test.
A regression test?
No, not a regression test.
There's so many tests out there.
Well, exactly.
That's what a regression test is. It tests
No.
compatibility with previous
versions. No, that's
versions.
not right. No, regression tests test that you haven't broken something that was working before.
Yeah.
But this compatibility matrix is testing that version 3 of the software works with version 4 of the software.
Okay.
So you're stuck with version 3 of the software. That's been released. You can't do anything about that. And we've made a guarantee that the two will interoperate. So then you have to write tests for every possible combination.
This is where we get into solid, though. This is where you get into the solid principles of making... well, one, I'm not sure which letter of the acronym it is, but you make sure that you... open-close principle, that's it. You make sure that your code is not modified. Open for addition, closed for modification. So if you create a method, for example, on an API... you would want to make sure that you never, once you've released that API, you never alter it. You create another method that does something similar or different. But that's extreme for me a bit.
And it is. Oh,
it's. I was going to speak up for Patrick here. It's something that we as gamers are actually quite familiar with. When we have a save game and a new version of the game comes out and you're told, well, we're sorry, your save games won't work with this new version. And you're just sitting there going, why? But it's sort of like that.
No, it's very much like that, yeah. So basically the software that we write, you know, people should be able to write states that work on the old version that can then be transferred to the new version. But because it's a store of money, so if you break that compatibility, then you can't spend your money. You've lost all your money, which is pretty. People don't like that. That's not the thing people like. That would be high on the list of things that you need to check for as a QA.
So we've established then that QA is about testing. So what else is it about?
I was going to say.
What else
exactly makes it different?
What makes it different?
Well, okay. So we have fantastic show notes, and I really want to break this down. What exactly is involved in the process of QA? Because Chris and I are familiar with testing. I mean, most of us here who are involved in gaming or playing games can understand what I just gave as a metaphor, apparently. But what is your process in QA, or what exists? And that might help people who are familiar with things. For example, Tooltepe is talking about the V model of testing in chat right now. So those of you who weren't here, hopefully you'll join us in the future and be able to get all of that fantastic information. So yeah, break down for us this process for QA.
Well, so there are lots of different areas to it. So at the very, very, very tip, the smallest and the biggest and the longest to the test that takes the longest to do, you've got manual tests, just actually running the software with as a real human and checking that it works. Because no matter, you can say you can get rid of automated tests. We was talking at work the other day, and apparently Google have got no human tests for Chrome. It's all completely automated, and they run 300 gajillion billion tests every 5 minutes on Chrome to make sure that it works and release it. But that's a huge investment to do that.
They've missed the test that checks how much memory it uses, though.
Yes, they have.
Well,
they really have.
Non-functional testing.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they're running 300 Google tests a minute. But anyway.
But apparently, Google completely automated the testing, but most companies are a long way away from that. So the biggest thing to start off with was manual tests. We basically, we got every team lead to go through the features that they were doing and say, how would I, as a normal person, use this feature, and write a test script and just go through it and step through it and do to see that it works. Do a bit of exploratory testing. So there are a few problems with that. One is it's not very repeatable, because unless you give very, very specific tests, you get 5 different people to do the test and they all run it a different way or do something different. One of them's running on Windows, one of them's running on Linux. So then you start saying everybody has to run it on Linux, everybody has to use this, version of Java, and then you start going, type this command, type this command, type this command, and then you basically practically automated it. In which case, then you need to start thinking about, well, actually, what is the value in doing this manual testing? Or maybe we move it away. But there are there is a lot of value in those exploratory tests, you know, because they do pick up things like, something didn't work, and I couldn't understand what was wrong. That's a real valid issue for a user, and something that an automated test framework would never pick up.
Cannot replicate. There's always an option in your drop downs in a QA system, isn't it? Cannot replicate. Send it back to the whoever reported the bug, and then they come over and go, well, if you just do this, 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 and this, and you, oh right, that's what you meant. I see now. Yeah, it's a 400. I'll sort that out or whatever.
So, I personally feel a mark of a good QA is being able to write those bugs so that they can be replicated. So when I used to find an error, what I used to do was blow it away and then do the test again to see whether I've got the same error, and then do it a few more times, and then again delete everything, and then start writing down the steps and following the steps that I just written down and checking that I can recreate the error before it takes a long time, but then it's, you know, when somebody gets the bug, they go, oh, I see what the issue is. Now I can start looking into it and debugging it.
It's understanding, I think, as a QA, that you have the responsibility to make sure that you're reducing the time sink across the team as well, because at the end of the day your job is finding bugs and and reporting them. If you find a bug and report it and go, there's a bug on this page when you click no, right, well, it doesn't happen for me, so what other things have you clicked? Software is complicated, you know. So yeah, just what you said. I've had people who've done exactly that, not actually told us how to report a bug, and when, you know, you get frustrated and you just you deprioritize it, and then the communication breaks down, and then we get back into this situation where everyone gets annoyed with each other. If you don't, yeah, and it's not about that. It's about working together. If someone gives me a very clear bug, I'm love it. I can't remember the last time I've actually dealt with a bug, though. I've got to be honest with you.
Well, it's
I can't remember the last time I wrote any software that had a bug.
I didn't say that. I meant I've dealt with a bug.
Well, it's interesting because I can remember in my particular case dealing with a situation where we had a bug show up, and the bug only showed up when a certain period of time passed between the triggering of an event and another event occurring. And we only found this out because the actual physical person, got up to get coffee in between the test, in between the steps of the testing. And it actually revealed a glaring timing hole in how some of the stuff had happened there. But I feel sorry for the fact that we live in a day and age where finding a team that can do quality assurance, or finding a company that's willing to put money into it, you know, is very hard. I mean, we admit, we started the show talking about, you know, we don't live in a day and age where you can send a change to your quality assurers, and when they go, yeah, we haven't found anything, all of a sudden it's 100% bug free or anything else like that. But you made mention of doing something, Anthony, and I'm really curious about this because of our show name. So you talked about how you were following certain steps, and you were writing down your steps, and then you were doing your tests and trying to duplicate and replicate, as we like to call it in the IT world, your steps and your processes. How much of your documentation is handed to you sort of before the fact, or how much do you have to do yourself? How much is shared with the rest of the team?
So how much was, or how much should be?
Let's do both.
I mean, so because we
I mean, we all want our Nirvana. You know, is it Nirvana? Is that the new buzzword right now? What's your Nirvana network or something? I don't know. Whatever. But go ahead.
So basically, we didn't really have a QA function. So me and another guy volunteered to sort of do it full time for a few months. So we basically had a list of test scripts that were written by developers who didn't want to write test scripts and sort of felt it was beneath them, all had different ideas of what should be in a test script and weren't. So it's basically a bit of a pile of spaghetti.
Developers should never ever write test scripts. Ever.
Developers should absolutely write test plans. They should engage the QA to explain what the feature is and what. I think as a developer, you need to be responsible for your work, and a large part of that is explaining, you know,
yes,
what you would do to test it.
You absolutely get involved in it.
The detailed test scripts, possibly.
Absolutely, as a developer, you should be getting involved with your testers, your QA guys, you should be helping them, you should be working with them, and you should be explaining what you think it should do. But a developer's head is not in the right space to write, unless they are extremely experienced, to write tests for a business. They care about different things than the business do. Who should be writing the tests is the people the product owners, the people who speak to the users, the people who sit with the users and understand the business and what they actually need.
And I'm not entirely sure the product owner should write them either. So, I mean, the test remix
depends on the definition.
QAs, but they were very difficult to follow. A lot of them were extremely vague, like sometimes just one line. So
you send it back to them. I'm sorry, there has to be a certain level of, right, I'm sorry, but I can't work with this. You need to give me more detail.
But, yeah. Basically, I spent a lot of time going through them, speaking to the people, fleshing out the test scripts properly.
I'm sitting here going, I wonder... I'm sitting here wondering if I should literally just go, in the blue corner, we have Chris.
I've got to say that I nearly fainted then. I was shaking my head so much. Nobody listening to the podcast could see it, but I actually did go a bit dizzy.
Well, your eyes did kind of whirl, and we saw little stars, but, you know...
But I do think, though, there is a general problem that, okay, developers aren't the best people to write complete test scripts, but I think they should be a lot more involved in specifying how to test it and what they've done than they are doing. Anyway, at our place there was only me, and I spent a lot of time speaking to the people whose features they were, understanding how it worked, fleshing out the test script, so then other people could run them without having to go through all of that knowledge. So I spent quite a lot of time, updating those. And after doing that for a while, I went, wait a sec, I've done this test 636 times now. How about I just write a program that does it for me because I'm a programmer?
Well, isn't that the solution we all come up with? It's this, how fast can we automate a particular part of our pipeline and workflow?
Yeah. Automating is great. Absolutely, yes. There are acceptance tests that we can write. There are snapshot systems that you can use. There's a system that I've used, a few systems in fact. One called Eggplant, which you might have heard of, which essentially takes snapshots of a system, allows you to record macros of how you test something, and then it replays them when someone releases a new software, and you can automate that as well. It takes quite a lot of resources, requires its own server, that kind of thing. But there's also other things like Selenium, which tests
Selenium I'm very familiar with, yeah.
There's a few of them like that, but that tests front-end actions. It doesn't necessarily test it like a user, but it tests it via the browser or via one or more browsers. So they're really handy. I haven't much experience of that side. I have done a little bit, but not much. I can't talk about it too much. But there are so many different levels of testing. I still genuinely believe that even in big, complicated pieces of software, that, bear in mind, they're probably making the people who write them lots of money. They've got the time and the money to invest in proper QA processes. They should be manually tested to some extent. But automating's fine, but automate it properly, and automate it in an automated way, as in put it into your CI and CD process. Not just automate it on your computer, run a script when you've got the software open, because that stops you from doing other valuable work. Put it into a CI/CD process.
Well, that's the hope. I mean, like I said, we all kind of wish that... It's interesting. You can get a degree in development. I have never really seen a degree for quality assurance or testing or anything else like that.
I haven't seen a degree for development either, personally, but I haven't looked either.
I have.
I have seen a degree in David Beckham.
I don't even know. No, thank you.
Essex University did one when I was going to go to university. It was on the list of degrees that were available. Not to me specifically.
And welcome to Useless Trivia Part 3. Okay, so we've mentioned a couple of tools that can be used for testing on the quality side. What I'm curious about is what you do, Anthony. What do you use as part of your quality assurance? How also do you enforce, going to our show title, quality assurance, and At any point in time, does any of that involve pictures of cats?
No, there's no cats. Sorry. I probably should have saved that for the end. Because now the rest of what I say is not going to be very interesting, but no, there's no cats. So from a point of view of the automation, somebody had done some work on automation before and written some scripts that automated tests and that sort of stuff. And when we came to test the next version of the software, all of that stuff had bit rotted, if you've ever heard of that term, because it was just stuck in the repository and nobody had looked at it. It turns out, lo and behold, after 6 months of development, none of it worked anymore. So one of the biggest things that I did was, like Chris said earlier, I wrote some tests and I put them into the into the CI pipeline, and then I made sure that if they failed, that everybody knew about it. So, and so we have
everybody.
So we have a big dashboard on the wall with a list of all the pipelines.
Anthony taking his passive-aggressive developerisms into the QA process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oi, everyone! This is the most important thing in the world because it involves me.
And I was right.
Poor Anthony.
Yes, as Pat Root was saying, bitrot. We actually were introduced that term. Last time we had a show, Mark Walsh, who was on, introduced it. I'd never heard it before, but we now know what it is. So please watch our other show if you want to learn about that.
So basically, we had a lot of testing to do because we have like a 6 monthly yearly release cycle. So we sort of do no testing for ages, and then suddenly we get this. I need to all of the testing. So a lot of the developers started. I started off with one other guy, and at one point we had all of the developers testing, 30-odd developers testing, doing manual tests. As you can imagine, they really, really enjoyed that. And what can you tell me? What every developer started to do straight away?
Play Quake or something. Honestly, I'd just
write some scripts to automate it. So they all had 30 developers writing 30 different scripts to write 30 different tests, and it's a complete waste of time. So
absolutely useless.
So I hurt at the amount of lost productivity.
This proves my point. Proves my point. You do not get developers involved in testing. Get them involved, sorry, but don't let them test. There's no value whatsoever. Get them on the next version of the software.
I disagree, but I think there is value
in
developers.
And in the red corner, we have Anthony, developer turned QA.
Turned developer again, by the sounds of it, as well.
Certainly, the process of me spending 6 months doing QA has definitely improved my development skills, my understanding of the software, and I think that is a valuable thing to have. I think getting developers to test their own software, their own things that work on, is a terrible idea because you can't mark your own work. But I do think a period of spending some time analysing somebody else's work from an outsider point of view, how can I make this work? And bear in mind, the software that I'm talking about, our users are actually other developers.
That's okay.
So it is slightly different than getting developers to check a website by clicking on all the buttons, or that sort of thing, possibly. Although I still do think that having a bit of thought about how people will use your software is something that is a skill that's sadly lacking in a lot of developers these days.
There's an adage for it. Go on, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Get your adage in. I don't know the adage. I know there is one, but there's basically you're going against the grain there, trying to get developers to do something they don't want to do. They know there's no value in, and they're constantly told there's no value in it either. There's value in getting involved in the process, but not actually performing the testing. They hate it. They want to be writing code. They want to be right. For God's sake, how many years has it taken us to get developers to write tests properly? And that's code.
Even then.
Yeah, TDD.
Even then.
A lot of the unit tests that I see are quite frankly
dog shit
of little use.
Wow, we almost made it through a show without proper cursing. There you go, Patrick. Chris is bigging it up there for you.
It's a mild one.
Okay. And it's interesting.
Getting developers to randomly to regularly do a large amount of manual testing. You're right. It's going to piss developers off. It's not a value, but I do think there is some value in taking some ownership for your work and looking at it from the other side of it.
Oh,
that's just me.
Absolutely. Ownership doesn't come in the form of testing, though. When I write a piece of software, I own that software. If there is a bug in that software and someone reports it to me, it gets fixed or it gets dealt with in whatever is the appropriate way. That comes with seniority and experience. But
DNR.
But as soon as somebody tells me, if anybody above me, any leader, any manager comes up to me and says, "I'm going to get you to do testing for the next week," I'm leaving. I'm sorry. It's none of this, it's my job or not. It is not appropriate for a developer to test a piece of software. They write software. That's where their skills are. That's where their value is. Get them to do other parts of the development life cycle. Get them to be involved in writing either the next bit of software or getting involved in getting the tickets ready for the next piece of software, or even fixing bugs. There's so much work to do. Software is never finished. Developers should be developing. Testers should be testing.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, there is a soapbox.
I am not happy
Chris.
about this.
I can tell you're not happy. And it's interesting to me because I come from a world where I am 100% responsible for the code that I produce, but I'm also 100% responsible for testing the code as well. I don't have the ability to turn around and go, "Hey, you go test this for me." I don't have that. I am the end all be all for the products that I do at this current moment in time. And it's interesting to me because I can see the perspective of, I would rather at times just sit there and make certain that I am hammering out the next task, getting the next component ready, putting together the next release, getting all of that stuff going, planning out my next swim lane, like throw out all the damn terms you can here. I would rather be doing that. But then there are times where I'm like, this isn't quite right, and I need to figure out why. And I have no one else to tell me except myself, where I'm looking at something going, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" And it's only after I've tested things through. So I sit there and I can kind of see, in a company where you have a lot of people, it would be fantastic to have people whose sole job is to do the testing. I think in a weird way, this is where the enterprise world could learn from game development. It's a strange thing to say, but I have seen applications, I've seen apps use a philosophy where they go through and they do their cycle, their development cycle, and then they have a small selection of their users as part of the QA, because those users are the ones actually making use of that particular product. And those people can then do reporting of bugs and things like that. But I also know for a fact that in those particular apps, they also have a QA team that works with that small community as well.
So Tultepa has just said in chat, I agree to a point. He was responding to me earlier on with my little rant. He said, "For me, testing my own code is usually a bad idea, as I tend to know how I intend it to work. Therefore, my tests reflect that too." Physical tests, I'm assuming he means. Now, I can give a great example of this in the game world. When I was doing my indie game, it was a parkour game, 3D parkour game, and I played it and played it and played it over and over, constantly pressing F5 and playing and play testing and testing every box, testing every single different height and possible way of working. And then I gave it to my graphics designer, and within 10 minutes he broke the game entirely. He did something, he managed to do something that I had not thought of. So my game, you could jump from a wall onto another wall, but I hadn't put enough of a delay in it, so you could actually get into a corner to stop you actually jumping, rather. So you could get into a corner, like a 90-degree corner, and you could just hammer the jump key, and you could just basically bunny hop up the corner. So he just got up to the top of the level. With
that was a feature, wasn't it?
But this is a emergent gameplay, as we say.
That goes right back to what I was saying, though. I mean, we have, in the enterprise world, if you have a situation where you're developing an app and you do not have the finances to have a proper QA team, which kind of breaks my heart. So, Anthony, I still take my hat off to you for choosing to go into such a shitstorm of a position. But if you can't do that, instead, hire one person whose entire job is to get a collection of your current user base who wants to be on the bleeding edge and get them involved. So it's somebody other than the person who's responsible for the component that has been built.
So that is a very interesting point, Josey. And
one of the things I do for people. That's why I ask. Hire me, people! Hire me!
One of the big differences between games and enterprise software is that the people who buy games are the people who play them.
And want to play them.
And want to play them. With enterprise software, the people who buy the enterprise software are not the people who use them. So one thing that I've noticed over the years is very often with enterprise software, nobody cares about the user. They want a flashy demo because they need to demo it at a boardroom to the people with the money in the suits who are never ever going to use the software. And actually, that sort of thought about the people working on it day to day is not often there, which is why a lot of enterprise software is very crappy.
I usually work on back office software, so
actually do it. But anyway, go ahead.
So I work on back office software most of the time, so I'm engaged. I don't have to make it flashy and fancy for somebody who's in a boardroom. I mean, sometimes I do, very rarely, but generally I interact with the users and I prototype with the users before we actually get to a point where we're developing, before we actually deliver something to them. But I get that point, and I get the point that some places don't have the resources to have the testing done, but those same places, it's still, I still cannot see past. There's nothing that anybody can say to convince me that developers should be testing their own code.
Well,
yeah,
not their own code.
And I specifically said not your own code.
Yeah, right? I'm still not sure about that, though, to be fair. I'm still not sure about the actual value in them testing somebody else's piece of software.
Well, certainly, like where I work at the moment, the software is very big and it is very complicated. And we've got about 30 developers in sort of, I don't know, six teams of sort of 3 or 4 and some other people floating around. And spending a few days taking somebody else's code out and giving it a test run and understanding what it's meant to do, and then feeding back from the point of view of a technical user who doesn't know anything about that feature is invaluable, both for your knowledge and for that team's knowledge. And being a programmer, you've got that extra level of knowing a bit more about the whole system and how it all fits together, which is, which I think is quite useful. I'm not going to ask you to do it, Chris, so don't worry about that.
Yeah. Chris, as we know, will probably jump on a soapbox and then like wave a banner, form a union, all the typical things.
Union? I'm a contractor. Union? I should be so unlucky.
Well, here's what we'll do. We're going to agree that there are certain parts of QA that we agree with and certain parts of QA that we don't agree with, and we can agree that if anything could be said about QA, it's that it's misunderstood in some cases, overused in other places, or completely unused where it should be. Can we all agree to that at least without,
Yep.
me taking fighting?
However, no.
Oh, no. See, now here we are. We're at the point in our show where it's time for RTFM. Those of you who are involved in the world, yes, that's right. This is our chance to rant about anything. It doesn't have to be dev related. It doesn't have to be code related. It doesn't have to be human related, although 9 times out of 10, it usually is human related with us. Do you have something to rant about today, Chris?
I have 3 things to rant about today, but I'm going to rant about
one of them. Well, I guess this makes up for past couple of weeks where you really haven't had much to rant about.
They're all kind of related. As people who are in our Discord will know, I've recently been hit by a shared hosting issue, and this is something that Josey kind of comes across, and she had a bit of a GoDaddy rant a few months ago. Similar kind of thing.
I can write about GoDaddy forever.
What has just happened is I've been with my shared hosting provider for years, over 10 years. Very rarely have any issues with them, but recently I've had a number of things go wrong. I'm getting tons and tons of Let's Encrypt notifications for domains that I don't own, to my business email address, which I've been reporting to them, and all the domains are registered to them, so it's definitely a shared hosting control panel configuration issue or something. They're just saying, oh, there's nothing wrong, and there is, and I don't have access to it, so I can't see it. That's rant number one about shared hosting provider. Rant number 2 is yesterday, all day I had no access to my email because they've been bought out by a new company, and this new company has obviously decided to do some changes, probably DNS records, probably they say it's something to do with the old hosts just randomly changing a server into a, it doesn't matter, it's
without any QA,
I mean, these are small shared hosting providers as well, so they've got great support teams, they respond to you very quickly, but when something hits the fan, they can't deal with it, you know. I spent all day yesterday with no updates whatsoever, no email, and I was worried. The amount I rely on email, I didn't realise how much I need it. I need it for two-factor authentication for a number of things. I need it for signing up for personal things like insurances. I need it for logging on to or you know, forgot password things occasionally if I need to do everything. Almost everything on the internet relies on email, even though it's kind of an obsolete technology now as well. I'm not going to go on. Anyway, shared hosting providers, move off them, please. Just, oh God, I'm moving. I've moved my email already today.
I'm very proud of you, by the way, for that. Especially since you got your SPF records sorted and you're getting your mark settings. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, that was a priority.
Yes. What about you, Anthony?
I don't think I've got anything to rant about at the moment. I'm pretty mellow. Well, I've got something that I can share with you that's pretty amazing. Chris will have probably seen this today on Facebook, but I went to McDonald's for breakfast this morning, and I got double sausage and egg McMuffin. And when I opened it, it had 3 pieces of sausage in it, an extra piece of sausage that I'd never asked for.
That's pretty.
I was
good.
It's made my day.
Obviously, that muffin did not go through quality assurance.
It did not go through quality assurance. You're right. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock almost, and I'm still buzzing about it. So,
still buzzing off the extra 500
Absolutely
calories for that one patty.
Oh wow!
What about you, Josey? Have you got any rants?
I have so many; it's insane. But I will just simply state the #1 thing lacking in this world that would solve 99.9% of my rants is communication.
Mm-hmm.
Please communicate. If you're making a change and it will impact a service of mine, fucking tell me. If you are planning on doing some type of change of what it is that you want feature request wise, don't wait till the last minute when you realize that's the change you wanted 6 months ago. Communicate, please. And yes, I agree, Aussie. More love would definitely make the world a much, much better place. However, communicate with love. That would be great too.
Yeah. It all comes down to communication at the end. Everything.
It does.
My RTFM did then.
100% does.
And
I mean, ask for your extra sausage patty. You might get 3.
I think you might get 3 sugars if you ask for 3 sugars at McDonald's, but they're giving you an extra patty. Now that's.
However, I should quantify that statement. Don't just communicate. Communicate without passive aggressivity.
Yes.
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 You know,
do you know you haven't done that? Do you know you haven't done this right?
Oh.
Yeah, love that. Love it when someone comes over and does that. Oh, have you seen this? It's ridiculous. Anyway, so yes.
Yes. But we're at the end of our show now. Massive thank you to Aussie and Vina, to Tepe, to Patrick, and also to all of you fantastic people in chat for joining us. We do hope that those of you who are watching in the future on the YouTubes or listening in the future on the Spotifys will join us live. We'd love to hear from you while we're actually chatting. Now, come to our website. Chris has been doing things here and there. He's actually done some stuff while I've been gone.
No, I haven't.
You did. There was a change or something. I saw something change.
You might have got a GitHub email about a security notification, I think, came in that I need to get on, but that wasn't me. That's just GitHub telling me off for not doing things.
Right. Okay. Well, see, yes. Don't worry. Chris is awesome. But go visit our website, www.dnistream.live, where you can find links to all of our past podcasts and get to our Discord. We'd love to see you there. We rant all the time. Not always, we also share funny GIFs and things as well.
We do.
And you can also check our YouTube channel, subscribe, even if you ignore us after that. We need a couple more people so we can get ourselves an actual personalized URL. That's our goal. Our goal is just to have a personalized URL for YouTube.
And speaking of our website, you can also contact us on there for any reason whatsoever. If you want to be a guest on the show, or you want to complain about something, or you want to communicate with us, please feel free. Anything that we've said today, just come and get involved. The source code for our website is available on github.com/documentation not included. Come along, get involved, do some code for me, because I've got too many things on at the moment and I haven't touched it for ages, and I've got loads of little features. I still haven't fixed God's bug that he's raised. I'm sorry, God. I'll get onto it at some point.
Wow. And of course, finally, thank you very much, Anthony. The shit. You, I hope, have enjoyed having a bit of argumentative back and back.
I always enjoy arguing with Chris.
And hopefully everyone who has watched has learned a little bit about quality assurance. Perhaps, maybe actually be interested in digging more into it. That would be good. And Anthony, besides quality assurance, you got a website, a company, a personal project, anything you might want to pimp?
Nope.
An MTG
Not even
group.
yourself.
I've got a Twitter handle and I never use it, but feel free to tweet me.
You respond to me.
Did I just hear MTG? Are we talking Magic the Gathering?
It is, yes.
Oh, I do play MTG. Really badly.
Do you?
I did a tournament last weekend, a pre-release tournament. I came 19th out of 24 people, and 3 people didn't turn up. Particularly pleased with that one.
I like that.
Out of curiosity, what was your deck?
Oh, it was a pre-release, so it was just like whatever junk I found. I got the couple of booster packs.
Yes, but I'm just curious what you ended up with in the end.
What ended? Do you know? I can't even remember. It was that bad. I blanked it from my mind.
I think
I've got the cards here.
Orsi earlier said that she hadn't got a clue about all these acronyms, and she appreciates us. I've got no idea what you're talking about. As much as I really want to play MTG, I've just never had the time to get into it. Same for D&D and anything like that.
Aussie is a he, by the way.
Aussie. Did I get it right?
Aussie. You did get Aussie right, but Aussie is a dude.
Oh my God! Will you all have names that look like the sex you are, please?
I'm sorry. Did you just say sex you are?
Sex you are, as in gender.
Oh, the gender.
Like your gender.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were trying to like advertise Pornhub. Speaking of a funny thing, and then we leave. A funny thing, and then we leave. So, I came back to work to news of Pornhub looking to buy Tumblr. To bring it back to its not safe for work format. Oh. My only thought was, that'd be awesome. I mean, you know Pornhub does a VPN, right?
No, I didn't know.
They have a free VPN.
Free
I'm not saying use it. I am not saying use it, but they do have a VPN. A VPN client for your phone.
Write that down. Just write that down.
Yeah, well,
I can give you better VPN clients. But yes.
Yeah, so we hope to see you all next week. Thursday, 7 p.m. UK time, twitch.tv/DNI stream. Keep your eyes on our Twitter at DNI stream, and hang out in our Discord chat if you need any. Well, you want to see updates about our upcoming shows. Just
come say hi to us. Talk to us about your day. Tell us what you're coding, what you're not coding, what you're developing, what you're networking.
Indeed.
We're nosy.
Yes. Right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much for seeing.
See you next week.
Bye.